Hello and welcome to CPAC 2020. I'm your host, Amelia Kane, and I have the pleasure of sitting down today with Congressman Louie Gohmert. Louie, thank you so much for being here today.
Wow, you said it was a pleasure and you said it with a straight face. I'm really impressed. That's amazing. But thank you.
Thank you.
It is a pleasure to be with you.
Now, you were inside the Mueller hearings. What are your takeaways from that?
Well, I've known Mueller a long time, and I personally believe he did more damage to the FBI than anybody, including Hoover in his late years. Of course, Comey was pretty bad too, but Mueller ran off thousands and thousands of years of experience, and I can't help but think if Mueller had not done that, when you had people like Strzok and Page and McCabe and so many who in the DOJ and FBI who ended up being corrupt, that there would have, before they became corrupt, there would have been some of those old heads that would have said, look, you don't want to go down this road. It's going to lead to trouble. It's not going to work out like you think, so don't go there. But Mueller ran off so many. But I got tired of hearing people that should have known better, Republicans, saying, oh yeah, Mueller was a gold standard of investigation. He's such a sharp, great ethical guy. I'm going, these people don't know what they're talking about. So I set out to do an article, an op-ed about him to wake people up to who Mueller was and the people he had harmed, the innocent people he had harmed. And I think I texted or emailed Sean Hannity and said, Sean, I want to wake people up to how bad Mueller is. And I was wanting to do an op-ed. They usually don't, newspapers normally don't want more than 800 words. And I'm just getting started and I'm already at 2,000 words. And so Sean wrote back and said, you just write everything you need to write. We won't worry about a publisher, and I'll have you on the radio show, and we'll let people download it from my website. So that's what we did, and it ended up a lot of radio talk shows all over the country would have me on. They put it up. I have no idea how many of them. It's really a booklet, 60, 70 pages, but exposed so much of the damage that Robert Mueller did to the FBI. So there wasn't a whole lot of surprises for me. Some people, Republicans, were surprised to find out just the kind of damage he had done, but I was not one of them. Now, when he came in to testify that last time, he appeared to have lost a step or two in the mental acumen area. But, and I still hadn't figured out the last thing he said in response to me, but I'll take the question. And anyway, but my comment was basically President Trump knew he was innocent. He was doing everything he could to assure that he wasn't railroaded into something of which he was not guilty. So President Trump was not obstructing justice. President Trump was pursuing justice. Yes. You were obstructing justice. Yes. You were preventing the truth from coming out for 2 years nearly. So anyway, I would have felt sorry for him, except he has damaged so many innocent people. It's kind of hard. And he's never apologized, not to one of the people he wronged.
Can you give an example as to what Mueller did to hurt people? Just one example for us.
One example of how he did. Well, you could go back to the 4 people in prison when he was U.S. Attorney back in, or he was in charge there in Boston, and he knew these 4 guys were in prison for a murder they did not participate in, but he still kept insisting that they should not be released from prison. But you can go to back after 9/11 and the scare that took place. He went after a guy that worked in a lab who had nothing to do with the anthrax, and there was no evidence whatsoever to indicate he was implicated in any way, and yet, and in fact, as I understand it, President Bush even said, doesn't appear to be any evidence. You sure this is really the guy? Said, absolutely, 100%. Well, he was not. And the federal government ended up paying over $6 million payout to this guy for destroying his life when he was totally innocent. But Ted Stevens was a U.S. Senator, he longest serving Republican at the time, and Mueller's FBI went after him. There's no way you go after a sitting U.S. Senator without the head of the FBI having full knowledge of all that was being done. And it came out after he was convicted, immediately, days before his reelection. He was convicted. After he narrowly lost his seat because of the conviction, an FBI agent filed an affidavit explaining basically he was totally set up. There was exculpatory evidence to prove he was not guilty. And, the FBI had covered it up, and they had basically fabricated the whole case against him, that he had actually overpaid the improvements to his home, not taken a gift, and yet they'd covered that up. Well, he ends up dying in a plane crash after that. He would never have been on that plane if Mueller's FBI hadn't improperly convicted him. And so what happens? The person that was guilty of the fraud, as set out in the affidavit, gets moved out, promoted to another place, and the guy that filed the affidavit seeking justice, he gets run out of the FBI by Mueller. I mean, that's his FBI. So those are just a couple examples. Yes. Another, let me give you one more. Curt Weldon. He was in Congress in 05 and 06, my first term. He used to go to the floor giving speeches about something called Able Danger. Apparently, it was a program designed to figure out who the dangerous radical Islamist terrorists were in the country, and they had identified a majority of the 9/11 hijackers. They had all of that information, and Kurt was giving speeches about it. And I didn't know about the program, but I kept thinking, the FBI's got to respond, because he keeps accusing them of sitting on the information that they could have stopped 9/11. Surely the FBI, Mueller's got to come out and address this.
Yes.
Well, they did in 2006, 2 weeks before the election.
Yes.
They raided his daughter's law office that worked with him, and there were reporters out there for the early morning raid, so the FBI leaked that. There were people that showed up immediately at his congressional office with pre-prepared signs saying that he got caught red-handed, guilty of fraud, stuff like that. And that was 2 weeks before the election, and he narrowly lost his seat.
Yes.
And several months later, he was notified by the FBI that you can come pick up all the material we got in the raid. We never did take it to a grand jury. And Kurt told me back in January that actually it was worse than that. They've now found out they didn't even have a warrant when they raided his daughter's office. So this was Mueller's FBI.
Yes.
So to have a guy like that in charge of the investigation of the effort trying to run President Trump out of office, just outrageous.
Now, my last question for you, Louie, is this. How would you describe the sentiment on Capitol Hill in one word after the Mueller hearings?
Well, the word would be outrageous.
Yes.
Outrageous.
Yes.
Outrageously partisan by the Democrats. Some of us are not that allegiant to our party as we are to our country.
Yes.
We took an oath to the Constitution, to the country, and yet we have one party. They seem to care less about damage being done to our nation and our ability to keep this self-government going, and it's all about trying to get power.
Yes.
Like with the coronavirus.
Yes.
They're playing politics with that. It's outrageous. They accused Trump of being responsible for the spread of the coronavirus. Then they've also condemned him for not having the border wide open. And then third, they call him a racist because he wants to have a secure border.
Very disturbing, very disturbing.
Disturbing is a good word. Outrageous is a good word. I like disturbing, though.
Yes.
Thank you.
Of course. Well, thank you.
Pleasure to be with you. Thank you so much.
Of course. Thank you.
Thanks for tuning in. Be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel to catch all the latest news from Judicial Watch.